when you open any kind of a business, whether it's online or in person, and you have an actual physical location, it's no longer about customer service. It's about the customer's experience.
At the end of the day, what makes our optimization approach unique is that it recognizes what you're about to do and it optimizes your machine for what you're about to do.
Luxury is not defined by price, in my opinion. Luxury is about, the story behind the product.
I love connecting people. I love sharing and really inspiring people and how they also can really get out of their shell and really learn how to really be a connector as well.
Welcome everybody to Passage to Profit. This is Richard and Elizabeth Gerhart. You just heard from a few of our outstanding guests, so stick with us. We'll be right back. I'm Richard Gerhart.
And I'm Elizabeth Gerhart.
Welcome to Passage to Profit, the show that's all about small businesses, entrepreneurs, and the intellectual property that helps them flourish. Tonight we have on our show Deborah Boblitt, who is a motivational speaker on leadership, and she will tell you how to master the secrets of business communication. And also from
Solve IQ, we have Bogdan Adolinsky. So who could have used you a few minutes ago, Bogdan? And then we have two incredible presenters after that. How do you like living in a lap of luxury? For me, I love it. So if you want to find the things you need for that, you want to hear what Laurie is presenting. And also, how do you really communicate with people and network and all that stuff? Like, some people just do it so naturally and some people just stutter. So you want to hear what Steve Spiro has to say on that topic.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. But before we go to our guests, what do we have next?
We have IP in the news. Richard's got a doozy this time.
So,
you could get arrested.
So just to give you an example of what's been going on in China lately and intellectual property, there are a lot of people who question whether or not intellectual property in China is even worth having. Well, recently we got a newsletter from one of our Chinese colleagues, Ping Gu, from the Ping Gu team at the Xing Lun law firm. And they said in their newsletter recently that we recently secured a criminal conviction in a trade secret case in Sichuan, China, for our client, who is a medical equipment manufacturer. The two felons acquired drawings and technical information by their contact with the company, but they went out and they manufactured the items that they found before the other company could. And so the private law firm worked with the prosecutors to find the two felons guilty of intellectual property theft. And now they're apparently serving time in the Chinese penitentiary.
Can that happen here? I don't think you actually go. Well, I don't know. Some people go to jail for stealing. I mean, it's like stealing property. It's intellectual property, right?
Right. But I mean, in China, I just would worry about being criminally convicted of anything, because it used to be that they had these like death vans that would drive around and perform public executions. And so hopefully they just got jail time and are not actually being executed.
Our prisons are no picnic either. So if you want to stay out of jail, don't copy other people's intellectual property.
But you do bring up a good point. It's a crime to take intellectual property in the U.S. too, and it's not often prosecuted. But counterfeiting, if they catch you counterfeiting purses or any kind of materials, you can be arrested and go to jail for it. There was a former Google employee that was working in the self-driving car division of the company. And he went out and he started his own company for self-driving trucks. And he ended up with 30 criminal indictments for intellectual property theft. So it's really not as uncommon as you may think.
So yeah, if you want to start a business, make sure that you're not copying somebody else. Normally, I think what would happen would be that you get a cease and desist. And if you were selling, you would have to give them part of your profit.
But
Right.
yeah, normally it's just a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter. But
Right.
there's also the Economic Espionage Act of 1996, where if you give commercial trade secrets to a foreign government in order to help them, you can go to jail for that. And the first person who got convicted of that was an employee of Boeing. He ended up going to jail for 16 years for having given secrets to the Chinese government around rocket technology and airplane technology. So it's
Serious business.
Serious business.
But now we're going on to not so serious stuff. So Richard found this incredible patent, and this is being sold on Amazon. It's called the daddle. Now, it could have been called the maddle, but that doesn't sound as good. But it's basically, it's a harness that dad wears. Oh, he wears it around his waist, and it's got stirrups in the back, so he can give the kid horse rides.
Right. Instead of doing the normal piggyback thing,
it's a horseback, right?
When you wrap your arms around your son or daughter's legs, it's like stirrups. So you're like riding a horse. And
the patent drawings are kind of funny, but he got a patent in 20 years ago. He's been selling on Amazon, and it's got 4.5 stars. I wish I'd known about this 20 years
I'm
ago.
kind of glad you didn't, because I'm sure I'd have a sore back by now. But our son would have loved it, that's for sure.
Now, Richard's Roundtable.
Yeah, so hello, everybody. Welcome to Passage to Profit. It's so great to have you here. I was just wondering if maybe you could comment on what you just heard, or if you have a question about IP, I'd be happy to address that too. So why don't we go to Deborah first? Hi, Deborah.
Hello, good morning here anyway. I would comment on the daddle first, and that is, I'm so small and short, I probably could have fit in that little saddle right now. At 5 feet, I probably could have gotten in there, but it's actually a unique idea. And it probably works, and people love it. Obviously, they're ordering it on Amazon, so sounds good to me.
Yes, and then Bogdan, your comments?
I love the daddle idea 100%, because it actually extends the amount of time you get to give piggyback rides to your kids, right? As they get bigger, right? It's a tougher thing, right? They get heavier and so on. So I think it's brilliant. I was really interested about the China thing, because it's so, you always feel like, well, if my intellectual property is stolen in another country, whether it's China or another one, I can't do anything about it, right? But now this is kind of a nice example to see that that enforcement can happen outside of your own country. It's actually a good thing to know.
So step forward, so to speak. Absolutely.
Right.
So Lisa?
I work in luxury goods, so it's a little bit different, but intellectual property is a big, stealing people's logos, silhouettes, things like that. I used to work in the beauty industry, and it's rampant through that. You'd spend a lot of money in R&D to get a product to market, and then a mass market company would come along and replicate it. So it's sort of an ongoing issue of, people, unfortunately, by the time people are able to prosecute some of these cases, the damage has already been done, because people have sold so many goods. So if you remember back to New York in kind of like the 80s, when the guys would be selling the knockoff handbags on the street, et cetera. So there's still a lot of that going on, but it's definitely gotten a lot much better. A lot better.
You can recover damages in court. So yeah, I know your brand has kind of been disrupted, but you could still get damages. So it's worth it to have the intellectual property pursue it. So Kenya.
I was intrigued by the China thing too. I'm kind of with China, because I just feel like I've had so many things stolen idea-wise, and I feel if it was a little more strict here in the United States, people would think more. They would think, more about stealing from someone if they knew that the repercussions were more severe. So, I mean, I don't recommend anyone, going to jail in terms of getting like their hand chopped off or anything like that. But I would say,
why not?
Goodness.
Why not?
I will say that I like that they handle it in a way where people kind of know that there's, pretty severe repercussions if you do take things from people.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's another form of theft. Intellectual property
Yeah.
is property, and the law recognizes it the same as they do any other item or real estate or whatever. So if somebody steals, then it is a criminal offense. It usually doesn't work out that way, but it's always an option,
Right.
and you want to make sure that your property is safe.
Right. So Steve, what are your comments or thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to touch on the data, but the intellectual property part definitely intrigues me. I think the world we are in right now, it's such a global economy, global world, right? And not just intellectual property, but we're talking about internet security and hacking that's going on, and all these things that are happening across all borders. And the idea of what's going to be the way to enforce and police that in all those realms, not just in intellectual property, is I think a challenge that we're all dealing with. And as we move into this new world, now we're kind of borderless today, right? With Zoom and different types of platforms, there's no borders anymore, because Bitcoin, another hot topic right now. All these things are taking the borders away. So I think it's a hot topic. And are we going to have a world police now? What are we going to do to kind of enforce challenges that we have across all the countries now? It's a challenge.
That's a really great point, and it is getting more difficult. And lots of times the technology evolves faster than the law does.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, staying one step ahead, I think you have to take practical measures, be as practical as you can with the right kinds of software protection and so forth. But you raise a great point. So it's been interesting discussion, but we have to take a break. So stay with us. We'll be right back after this. Well, welcome back, everybody. It's Passage to Profit again with Richard and Elizabeth Gerhardt. So happy to be here, and thank you for listening. Our guest this evening is Deborah Boblitt, and she's a motivational speaker, and it was always her dream to make a positive impact on the lives of others. And Deborah was a top leader at State Farm Insurance Company, and she decided to head out on her own. So welcome, Deborah. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
What was it like to move from a corporate environment to running your own gig?
Yes, very, very different, as you can imagine, right? And I officially retired in order to do that. And I have been doing it for the last couple years, but it's great. You're out on your own, and you speak to others and you help them based on your experience and your expertise. And so it's been very gratifying, actually.
That's great. That's great. So what prompted you to decide to do this? What was your motivation and inspiration?
Yes, well, it's been interesting because I was an entrepreneur myself for several years, and then I was in leadership for 24 years, some type of a leadership executive position. And what happened during that period of time was I was always being asked to do exactly what I do now. So would you please come and speak to this group? Would you do this? Would you do that on this topic, on that topic, primarily around leadership and entrepreneurship? And so when I retired, I knew that that was my goal, is to be able to share that and to help people and to continue to help people understand what it is to be an entrepreneur. What are the tips for being an entrepreneur? What are the frustrations, et cetera? And then also, how do you lead a team? Because as an entrepreneur, you are a leader. And so how do you lead your team? How do you create a successful team? How do you communicate, et cetera, et cetera? So that's really what prompted me to do that, because I was doing that anyway, internally and then also externally, while I had the position in leadership with State Farm.
So what do you think the most important qualities a leader needs to have, and especially an entrepreneur leader needs to have?
Yeah, so if we narrow it down to an entrepreneur leader, I would say, first of all, there's got to be passion in there somewhere. You've got to be passionate about whatever you're doing. So if you're selling widgets or you're selling some non-consumable product, you've got to really care about that. You've also got to have perseverance, and particularly in today's environment, as we just saw through the pandemic, you're going to have highs and lows at all times based on the market and what's happening out there. So the perseverance piece is critical. It's got to be, I'm not going to give up until I'm successful. And that's really what it takes to be an entrepreneur and a successful entrepreneur. That's critical. The other piece that I think is very important, and I have been talking to a lot of business owners lately, small business owners particularly, and it's this issue of staff. That's always been the number one problem for every single business owner I've ever talked to over a 30-year period of time. And it's even more so today because it's difficult to get people. But it's not only difficult to get them, but then how do you continue to incent them? How do you develop them? How do you keep them staying in your business as opposed to the competition or going somewhere else? So that's critical as well. And so those three pieces are probably the most important. And then I guess I would add one more thing. When you open any kind of a business, whether it's online or in person, and you have an actual physical location, it's no longer about customer service. It's about the customer's experience. And there's a huge difference between the two. And you've got to have a plan and a way that you're going to provide the best customer experience, or that customer, that client's going somewhere else. And I've done that myself. If I don't feel like I've got the best customer experience at X, wherever that is, I'll just find the other one because there's competition everywhere. So those are critical pieces to being a successful entrepreneur.
That's great. And I just want to say that the bar for customer experience keeps raising, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Consider your typical retail experience versus Amazon.
Right.
Now the expectation is that you've got 8 billion things to choose from.
Mhm.
You've got all sorts of reviews to read about whether it works or not, how good it is, what the pluses, the minuses are. Once
And
you
you
make
get it
your
immediately.
selection,
Right?
yeah. What's that?
It's immediate. With Prime, you get it either the same day or the next day, right?
Right. And then it gets delivered to your door
Right.
almost instantly. And it's so reliable. And so
Yes.
that's like the standard, I think everybody expects for every kind of, retail transaction, every type of commercial transaction.
Well, that's why
And
it's so, yeah.
and if they don't do that, they're not satisfied.
Exactly. And really, you've got to train, if you have staff, you have to train your staff to be able to accommodate for that in some way. So business owners today have to be more and more and more creative. They have to be, because their competition is Amazon. That's on everybody's mind. I didn't get it in the mail today when I ordered it this morning. So what are you going to do for me? So
Right.
I think every entrepreneur has to think very carefully about that, and how do they create the customer experience that's going to keep me there as their customer, because competition is huge and the expectations of all of us, including myself, are much higher than they ever were before, because we can get it somewhere else.
Yeah, how important do you think the website is? Because we're actually working on ours now, and it's all about the customer journey through your website. Do you think every business needs a website in this day and age? And do you think it has to stand out?
Yes, and yes. I think it's very, very important. I was talking to a business owner the other day, young woman, who, by the way, opened her doors during COVID, which is pretty incredible. And they had a successful year. And they have gotten so large in 1 year, during COVID, no less, that they're now going to be expanding. And so I said to her, I said, tell me about this. And where are you getting your customers? A, B, where are you going to get your new staff? And she said, they have Instagram up, and only Instagram. They don't really use anything anymore. That is how they are getting customers walking in the door every single day. And that's how they believe they're going to get their newest employees as they expand. So, they're relying on that. Of course, word of mouth still counts in this day and age. Referral and word of mouth is still critically important. But that's really what they're relying on. If they didn't have that, they probably would not be expanding. So I agree. I think yes and yes to those questions. They're going to have a website, and does play a critical role.
But it's interesting to know that you can start without a website, which, 5 years ago would have been a shocking idea.
Yeah.
Yes,
Everybody would have said, well, you got to have a website,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Kenya, do you have any thoughts?
I
Yes.
do. Deborah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial rut and what you can share in terms of how to avoid getting into one and how to get out of one if you're already in one.
Yes, and I would say, we used to say in our business, hope is not a strategy. So I don't, right? Gee, I hope I'm successful this year. I hope I get clients or whatever. So I still think, Kenya, that you've got to have a plan. You have to have a solid business plan that you run by others, and that it's a practical business plan. And then don't forget about it. I've had so many entrepreneurs who develop the most incredible plan. It looks wonderful, and then they don't follow it. And so that's how ruts happen. When you let that go and you don't go back to what am I supposed to be doing on a daily basis? In my opinion, it gets that granular. What do I do every day to make sure this business is a success? And all of that needs to be in your plan. And then your employees absolutely have to buy into that plan and understand it and then act on it, or nothing's going to happen. And you're right. That's when the ruts come in.
So, Deborah, do you ever, when you're talking about this subject with your clients or with your audiences, do you ever talk about Plan B?
Yes,
as a
because
way to also kind of, counter those ruts?
yes, and I also think that flexibility, and we've been talking about this generally right now, but flexibility is key. So, for example, one more time, when the markets change, you have to be flexible enough to turn and change on a dime. And so COVID is the perfect example. This whole pandemic threw all of these small business owners just out on the street, basically, right? Now, what do I do? I'm closed for 4 months at least, or more in some states, as we know, right? Now, what do I do? And so many of them changed literally what they sold, or how they approached clients, or how they reached clients, or changed their website. I mean, it takes creativity and flexibility, and that is key. So I'll give you an example. Um, Being in the insurance industry, so in California, I had a lot of agents out there in California at one time, and that marketplace changes constantly, particularly as it related to insurance. Well, our business owners could sell one day, the next day they couldn't because of legislative issues, et cetera, right? And regulations. Today you can, tomorrow you can't. So you've got to have a plan B there. So if this happens, this is what I'll do. It is so critical. And I think last year was probably the best example for any business owner to know I better have a plan B.
Well, that's interesting. I agree with you 100%. And I talked to a lot of business owners for my startup business that I started right before COVID. It's an interview. I'll talk about it later. But at the beginning of COVID, and quarantine, I talked to people and they were scared. And then 6 months later, I talked to people and they had figured it all out. It was truly amazing. Like people that made their money giving presentations in front of live audiences, figured it out.
Exactly.
It was amazing. But I guess, how do you motivate people would be my question, because you're a motivational speaker and I've seen motivational speakers and I come out of there, I'm like, wow. So what do you think is important about motivating people?
Well, I think it's getting to their target area. It's getting to their passion. So I think everybody, entrepreneurs and anybody, especially people, of course, in leadership, have to be passionate about something, but you have to figure out what that is in your life. And then once you figure that out, there's all kinds of ways that you can go from there, from building a business to, kind of doing something completely different with that passion. But it's re-energizing. It's going back to what that passion was. And another example, we'd have agents who'd been in the business for 20 years. And all of a sudden, that motivation was gone. And so one of the best ways to re-energize them is to go back to this question, a very basic question. Why did you want to own your own business in the first place? What'd you want? And so if you go back to that passion, that basic feeling of this is what I want to do, and here's why, that's the best way to remotivate yourself and to motivate others. And re-energize your staff as well, by the way.
That's excellent advice. Kenya, do you have another comment or question?
No, I think that was a great question, Elizabeth. I think what would be helpful, I think for me and everybody is what are some ways to stay motivated, as an entrepreneur? Because I know there can be a lot of discouraging moments along the road. So I just was hoping you could share a few ways to stay motivated outside of, maybe hearing you speak.
Sure. And I would probably recommend one thing in particular, many others as well, of course, but create a net of individuals around you. And so it doesn't necessarily mean all those people are in your own industry, But if you have a net, which I did too, as an entrepreneur, and by the way, as an executive. So I had a net of about 10 people around, and they weren't always the same. They would change depending on what stage of my career I was in. But for entrepreneurs, get that net of individuals who are positive, because you're always influenced by both negative and positive people. Surround yourself with a net of individuals who are positive and they motivate you. Therefore, you have some issues, you're in a rut, like you mentioned earlier, whatever that might be, you know who you can call, and those people are there to surround you with ideas, encouragement, um, concepts you haven't tried yet, all those kinds of things. And to me, that's critically important as a new entrepreneur all the way through your career. It does not matter if you're 20 years in. Surround yourself with the right people who are positive, because we all get in those down moments and think, I'm getting out of here. This just isn't working and I've had it. And you need those other people around you to do that. The other thing is, of course, obviously there's a lot of motivational kinds of messages that you can hear now online. Whatever your issue is, you can Google it. You get in there, and like for me, my example of what I do, www.deborahboblett.com. And so I've got 3 different kind of talks that I do, particularly for leadership, but entrepreneurs, as you mentioned, are leaders. And so I talk about, when do you use this? When do you use grace? When do you use grit? Right? How do you lead a team successfully, et cetera, et cetera? How do you communicate? How do you get that message out? And so, find the people that motivate you and go there immediately. But I still think the best is get that net of people around you that you can call at any time. And that really can change the trajectory of your career.
No, that's great advice. I personally, I sometimes feel like having a business coach can make a big difference too. And also surrounding myself, like you suggest, with other business owners, because it's really important to be able to share some of the challenges. And if you say, look at, my accounts receivable is falling behind, the other person might say, yeah, I know what you mean, that really stinks, but this is what I've done to kind of address this, or you should consider this vendor who's like really good at this.
Yes.
And it can open new pathways for you and new ideas.
Yes,
So,
I have a woman that I'm coaching actually in Sweden. She's an entrepreneur in Sweden, and I was part of a launch team for an organization in Sweden called Stronger Together, and she's one of those entrepreneurs. And so this is a conversation we've had many times. And the other thing I would recommend is similar to what you were just saying, is find those people with either in your industry or your company, if it's a corporate kind of environment or whatever, who are getting it done, and attach yourself to those people. Have a regular monthly call with them. And in my own industry and company at the time, we had top producers, about the 1 to 5% of the entire company. We had over 70,000 employees and over 18,000 agents. And so our top level would have incredible ideas, because why? They were cutting it. They were making the most money. They had the most staff. They were enjoying life. And so my recommendation to all of our agents was, attach yourself to 1 or 2 of those people. You can't use all the ideas because they're not appropriate for your business necessarily, but you sure can take one of those ideas, and you can have that phone call to encourage you. So to your point, somebody who's got expertise in the same area is very, very helpful and encouraging.
Well, that's excellent advice. I could listen to you all day. I'd love to hear one of your motivational speeches, but we're out of time for this segment, unfortunately.
yes, and so we'll be right back with more Passage to Profit. Thank you so much, Deborah, and I hope you'll stick around to help us with the rest of the show. So
I will. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Sure, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gerhardt. So glad to have you with us this evening. And for our next guest, I want to ask, does your computer run like a Star Wars starfighter or a broken down 1945 Studebaker? We have with us this evening the Jedi Knight of PC performance, Bogdan Odolinski. Welcome to the show, Bogdan. Tell us a little bit about how Solve IQ works and what it does.
Sure. Thanks for having me on your show. Solve IQ is a company that's focused on providing the best performance, or providing the performance you would expect from the equipment that you use every day, whatever it is that you purchase, right? You bought a particular make and model of machine, you bought it for a particular purpose or set of purposes. Our goal is to make sure it's running in tip-top shape at all times. So we've got some unique optimization technology that's patented. I'm actually one of the authors of that patent. And we also couple that, because performance, when you think about performance, it's not just about, is it running fast, but is it running the way that you expect? Is it just, are there challenges that are getting in your way? So we've coupled that with essentially a human assisted service, so that if there's anything that does go wrong, has maybe nothing to do with performance, you can basically rely on Solve IQ to just basically jump in and help you resolve whatever it is, like a camera cutting out or audio cutting out during a Zoom call.
Right. So as a patent attorney, of course I have to geek out a little bit here, but how does the software do that? Do you like inject little workers that go into the computer and little Oompa Loompas that, fix the processor,
Sure.
or what? How does it actually accomplish these things?
Well, I'll start very top level, and I can get down to the nitty gritty if you'd like. At the end of the day, what makes our optimization approach unique is that it recognizes what you're about to do, and it optimizes your machine for what you're about to do. And it does that by detecting the apps that you're launching or the apps that you're focused on. So if you're launching a game, we'll optimize for that game. If you're launching a spreadsheet because you're doing some work, then we'll optimize for Excel, if that makes sense.
That sounds very cool. You know what? I wish my computer did that. I'm going to have to look into this.
That is totally Buck Rogers. We are, and it's really amazing that you folks could figure this out. So,
so there's the patent and there's the implementation, right? So you asked the question about, like, do we do worker processes? Yeah, we have this kernel level process. It sits sort of at the level of the CPU in software terms. And it just it detects those events. And then we've got some back end that just based on the event will issue the right set of tweaks and optimizations.
So does it work on Zoom?
So yes, absolutely. Recognize when Zoom launches, and it'll help just make sure that the PC has more resources allocated to the Zoom rather than whatever else you might have running in the background.
When we all have chipsets in our heads, you'll be able to predict what people are going to say and do. You realize that, don't you? For example, if I could predict what Elizabeth was going to say or do, I'd
better tread softly.
I'm not going to go there quite yet. I'm going to stick to the PC world for now.
So does it? You upload this to your PC and it just does it all? Does the user have to do anything, or?
So, we were talking about, Deborah was talking about, customer experience being key. And I do want to touch on that because it's what we're finding is really the critical component. But customers find us when they're searching for help on the internet, and we just know how to capture those people that are searching for help. The process is, they'll end up on our website, they'll download a piece of software. Once they embark into the software, it will automatically do those things that I just described. It will also tune your machine in terms of what might need to be tuned. The other piece behind optimization is protection. We all get gunk on our machine. We don't know how the heck it happens, right? All of a sudden stuff shows up that we don't remember installing. So we protect against all the bad stuff from getting on your machine. We protect you from visiting malware sites. Basically adding to your security, whatever antivirus you might have, we're adding layers to that.
So my websites always say that they're putting cookies on my computer, but I can never find out whether they're chocolate chip, and I never end up with any cookies in my office.
Okay, now that is a little lame there.
You think that was lame?
Yes,
okay.
So I think we should go to Deborah.
Okay.
Do you have a question or comment?
Now I'm hungry.
No, that was very funny, though. I really appreciated that. I was just laughing at that. That's great. But But, getting back to that customer experience piece again, there's a real big difference between the service piece and the experience. And the experience is how you make customers feel
Right.
about that product, whatever that product is, right? How do I feel? The service is just an expectation. That's the bottom level anymore. But how are you making me feel that's better if I go with your product than the other product down the street? So I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, Deborah, that's we're a company that's evolving, right? And so we spent the last few years re-architecting and implementing that patent and making it work real well.
Mhm.
And we've been acquiring customers, but now in our sort of growth path as a company, we've realized, well, okay, well, this service is an ongoing service. You want to make sure that people stay with the service, and it's all about making them feel like they're getting what
Right.
they paid for, right?
Right.
And that's where we're focused on. We're seeing the data is telling us, hey, we have work to do to really make them understand all the pieces and parts of this service, right? What one little data point, most of our customers don't know that the assisted service is there. We just don't do a good job of surfacing that, right?
Yeah. And your best source are your customers.
Right.
What do they want from you, right? What will make them stay with you? That's one of the best questions you can ask is, what will make you stay with us? What do you need from me more than anything else? And there's your answer.
So we just started implementing this thing called the NPS score. It's called the Net Promoter Score. It's one question. Would you recommend our service to a friend or colleague? On a scale of 0 to 10. And we just started asking that question, and we're finding out so much info. There's always a follow-up where they can put in some free text.
Yeah, because that was the question I had is, that's one thing to rate it. And would you tell somebody, but why would you tell somebody?
That's exactly what we asked
Right?
next,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Great.
or what could we do to improve that score,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And it's a gold mine, and it's
Great.
free. You don't have to pay a marketing company. You just ask your own customers who are already your customers.
Exactly. Yep.
Well,
We
that's
used to
great. So
say one other thought we used to say to customers, one of the best things was, look, we know price is critically important to you. It's important to all of us. But beyond price, what do you need from me for you to stay with me?
Right.
One of the best questions we ever got. And there were
Absolutely.
different answers for different customers, but that gave us the opportunity to meet individual needs, which is also unique. So
Right. Yeah. So for a lot of years, we always get that comment from customers. Well, it's the price that's the issue, but that never helped us make the product better.
right. Exactly. Exactly.
So that
People want to give that feedback. So I'll give that feedback to businesses whether they ask for it or not.
Right.
so
do I.
In a very motivated
surprise.
tone of voice.
But if you think people, and if you do something right, I'll give feedback. Like I'll give glowing reviews on Google. I don't necessarily ding people on Google because I don't know if my experience is the same as everybody else's, but I will go to the company privately and say, I'm not using you anymore because of this. So I think that's an important point for a business and an entrepreneur. If you can get that information before they leave, that's huge.
Exactly. Yeah. True.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so there's a strategy to when to ask. And, we were talking, so if you're talking about customer experience, it's really weird. You hear this term and it feels this like, okay, well, my experience is good. But the question is, at what points in time, right? Asking a customer that just bought the question of would you recommend might have a very different answer to somebody who's been with you for 3 months.
Right.
Right.
And so you have to think about context and timing of when you collect that survey, because the context matters, right? We know that always, but so like if my best contrast is we have phenomenal scores from people who get support, right? Like who actually interact with us. Mm-hmm. But now if you look at immediate post-purchase experience, based on our scoring, we know we've got some work to do, and that's what we're focused on right now.
Mm-hmm. So Bogdan, let me ask you, just to be perfectly honest, I've purchased products in that sphere before, and they haven't always worked that well. And so I know your product works great, but I think that some of the newer, older products were not as effective as the newer ones are today. Do you feel that is something that you have to overcome in your marketing? Or
I'm gonna, yes, to answer your question, there's definitely something that has to, like, from a marketing standpoint, there's always a challenge, right? How do you differentiate from competitors or the past, right? Or even, preconceptions. So one of the key elements to our survey, I mentioned it earlier, but that's to me the differentiator. How many services that relate to this optimization or making your PC better do you know actually have an actual assisted human assisted person that's ready to go and answer or help with your issue? Zero. Anyone that does, you get on the phone, first thing you want to do is sell you something more. You pay us $10, it includes everything. Right? That's the opportunity that we've jumped on, as that's our big differentiator.
And that is also, in my opinion, your customer experience.
Correct.
There it is, right there.
Absolutely.
If I can talk to you with an issue,
Yeah.
I'm in.
Right.
I just bought it.
there
And
you
I'll
go.
stay with you.
Glad I sold you.
I will stay with you because of that.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
always,
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've always said, every computer program is going to have its glitches and bugs. What's important is the tech support.
I absolutely.
Agreed.
And it sounds like yours is exemplary. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see a lot of success in your future.
No, that's for us, and we're not afraid of those conversations, because the more of them we have, the better our service becomes, because we just go ahead and code in for those instances, so fewer people need to call. So it's this nice sort of
Balance.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
that's
thank
great.
you very much. Unfortunately, we're running out of time for this segment, but Bogdan, where can people find Solve IQ?
It's exactly that, solveiq.com. It's hopefully easy to remember.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening. We wish you all of the success, and I hope you'll stick around for the remainder of the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're
Definitely will.
listening to Passage to Profit. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this commercial break. Welcome back, everybody. It's Richard and Elizabeth Gerhardt on your favorite show, Passage to Profit. And now it's time for Kenya Gibson and her Power Move segment. Who do we have with us this evening for Power Move, Kenya?
So for Power Move today, we're going to talk about Cameron Folks. So Cameron Folks is the founder of a veteran-owned lifestyle meal company called Eat Right. And basically what it is, it's a experience with celebrity chefs. So you get live classes with celebrity chefs, you get to cook with them, and they also have customized meal plans that they also put together for people. So whether it's ketogenic, you want a special breakfast based on your personality, they have everything when it comes to food that's really going to help you eat right and feel better and give you that celebrity experience as well. And they've actually partnered with Fabio Viviani, who's a celebrity chef, who is going to be, building this platform with them and giving people the food experience of a lifetime.
Well, that sounds great. So how do you get the food? I mean, do they deliver it, or is it pre-prepared, or do you go to a restaurant?
They deliver it, so it is pre-prepared. It's based on your personality, your profile makeup. So you basically tell them what your goals are. They customize a meal plan for you, and then as a part of that, you have an opportunity to also cook those meals and learn how to prepare things along with these celebrity chefs. So it's this full service lifestyle experiences. So you're not just getting food delivered, you're also having the opportunity to cook along with your favorite chef.
Well, that sounds great. I'm up for the 7-day-a-week steak dinner diet. French fries.
I don't know if the French fry diet works long term, but I'm sure they have something for everyone.
I'm just curious, Kenya, may I ask a question here? So,
Sure.
When you say eat based on your personality, can you give us any more detail on what that really means?
So basically, for example, like the breakfast option that they have, right? Everybody eats breakfast so differently. Like sometimes, like I don't eat breakfast till later on. I'm a light breakfast eater. I won't sit down and eat a full pancake, eggs, bacon type of thing. So they'll customize a plan or breakfast eating plan based on what your user experience or your habits are.
Habits. Okay,
Yes.
Great.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Very interesting. Great.
Very good. So thank you, Kenya. And now it's time for Power Move. Elizabeth, I'm sorry. Now it's time for Fireside. Elizabeth, tell us what's going on with Fireside.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know what Fireside is, it's a directory of small businesses on video. And it's different than anything else that's out there. And I had a vision for the website, and I had to use a website that was like putting a square peg in a round hole, didn't really fit. But now I've hired somebody to help me do the website I actually want. I hope it's possible because it hasn't been done like this before, but we'll see. So the website would basically have, it's a video directory. So it's a directory. So if you were a business coach, let's say, or motivational speaker, it would have a list of motivational speakers, and it would have a 10 to 30-second clip of them saying why you would choose them over someone else. And then they would have a page on the website that would have a full interview if you wanted to learn more about them, and also the transcription of that interview. And I interview people for that. I've been interviewing people for that. I'm continuing to interview people for that to get the content to build the basic site. And then we have some ideas for some automations to scale it. So right now it's not really scalable the way it is, but we have to build the minimum viable product, right? So I'm pretty excited that I'm going to be working with somebody who can actually maybe do the website that I actually want.
It goes back to an earlier point, though, that Deborah made, and that is that people make all the difference. And if you get the right person in the right spot, then that's like just an extra level of growth. So,
And Elizabeth, who's the user on this?
So the user is anybody looking for professionals. So the user would be the general public. I have a B2B section and a B2C section. So I want to split it out that way because, and some people are both, but for instance, I have business coaches on there. And what I find fascinating, Deborah, is that every single business coach does it differently.
Definitely.
And, so if you want to focus on this area, you would choose this person. If you want to focus on this area, choose, or maybe I don't like your personality, not you, but I do like your personality, but maybe I don't like the way this person talks to people, then I'm not going to work with them.
Yeah. And business coaches is really critical that you connect.
Right.
I've had several, and sometimes you connect, sometimes you don't, and you'll get nothing from those with whom you do not connect. So it's critically important. Yes.
Right. And so it's kind of a pre-screening. So that's who the user is somebody that would use the services. And then I do have a consumer products part to it and everything else. And then, but for you personally, who's the person that's on the directory, I think you get better qualified leads for your business from it. So Richard's telling me that I talk too much. So on to, thank you. We will move on now to Lisa Laurie. So I just have a question for our audience. Do you want to live in the lap of luxury, or at least feel like you are? So go visit Lisa's shop and you'll see what I mean. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about The Perfect Provenance.
So The Perfect Provenance is a luxury lifestyle company that I founded 5 years ago in Greenwich, Connecticut. We have our flagship is in a Victorian historical home. On the first and second floor, we have a restaurant and gifts for the home. And then on our second floor, we have men's and women's fashion and more gifts. And this past July, I had since relocated back to the West Coast where I was originally from. We opened a store on Main Street in Tiburon, California, which is about 25 minutes out of San Francisco. And then 2 weeks ago, we just opened our third store in Napa, California. So we specialize in bringing products and experiences from around the world. I worked in luxury goods for 25 years. So my goal was really to find unique quality items that people would cherish forever, really.
That sounds wonderful. I'm going to have to visit your store in Napa next time we go.
I'm definitely coming. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what makes something luxurious?
Well, luxury is not defined by price, in my opinion. Luxury is about, the story behind the product, where it came from, who made it, and how it makes you feel when you buy it. So the feeling that we want to give people when they come in our store or they shop online or they have any kind of interaction with us is that feeling that you get when you go on vacation and you go into a little shop and you find a top or a gift, etc. And when you take that product home, whatever it is, you tend to look at it in a very emotional way every time you see it. So I had an experience in Greece a few years ago. I went with my family, and we all know Greece is known for, blue and white, but there was a little shop there that had only blue products. It was only blue. So like blue cups, blue tops, blue, whatever. And it was such a clever idea. And of course I bought something because I just felt compelled to buy something blue. And I just wanted to try to capture that feeling that just because, especially during COVID, we're not traveling to Europe or maybe some other exotic places, we can still deliver that same experience here in our local towns or America at large or whatever.
Deborah, do you have a question or comment?
Oh, I'm already in love. I really love this. And what's interesting is I've had the opportunity, I'm so grateful for, to travel around the world. I know exactly what you're saying. It's kind of funny you bring this up. The other day I was saying to my husband, as I went around the house and in my closet, which is kind of like its own room all by itself, remember when I bought this? Remember where we were when I bought this? Remember this piece of jewelry? Remember? So I have incredible memories and feelings around pieces of jewelry, clothing, shoes, handbags, whatever I bought in other parts of the world. It was that little shop in the corner, etc. So you are totally onto something, and I love this idea. And I know Tiburon well too. I lived in California for 5 years. So boy,
nice.
I'd love to visit. Excellent. I really love this idea.
It's actually the exact counter trend to Amazon.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
When you buy something off of Amazon, which I do, I buy things on Amazon just like everybody else, but you don't have any sort of feeling. All your whole feeling is wrapped up in the expediency of the transaction. I forgot to buy my son a birthday gift. I'm going to buy him a basketball, and can it get here before noon? So there's no emotional investment in that experience. So that has a excuse me, a huge place in our society, obviously. But the counter trend to that is really community and connecting with people, especially in luxury goods. Certainly you can buy expensive handbags or watches or whatever it is online, but there's nothing like the romance of going into a store, trying it on, having a really great salesperson work with you, and and enjoy that part of it. I mean, for most people, it might be a significant amount of money, et cetera. And they want part of the experience of owning that is the reinforcement and the pleasure that they got buying it. And that's really what we try to give people.
And are all of them called Perfect Providence?
Yes. So it's
all
the
three
Perfect
of your
Providence.
shops.
Yes.
I love that. Excellent.
And the Perfect Providence really speaks to, you hear Providence a lot when you talk about antiques or wine or anything of true value. Where did it come from? And that's why I really say it's about where the item came from versus how expensive it is. We do have some very expensive items, but then we also have very inexpensive items. It might be something that I found at a trade show, or it might be something that I found at another little shop, and I called the designer and said, oh, I would love to carry this gift item, etc. So it just depends.
Kenya, do you have any questions?
I do. I'm so glad that you mentioned the word antique, because I love going to like antique stores and shopping and like getting things that it's been somewhere special and you're able to take that and bring it home. I have found the most special things in my life, including these earrings, by the way, which make me feel so luxurious. Yeah. I got these from a little, we have a lot of antique shops in Milford, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I just go there for the day sometimes, and I just walk around, and they have like the old, hotels that are there with all this, there's so much going on that it's old, but it's classic and it feels good, So I get it.
Yes. Well, America in the last 30 years, wanted to become a very mass market society, which has benefited us in many ways with big box retailers, et cetera. But what happened, I felt, was that we over commercialized so many products. And then, you could walk into a party or into a room and 4 people are wearing the same jacket, et cetera. And so it's just nice to go back to individuality. And I always say that our concept is very old fashioned. It's about knowing the local shopkeep. 40 or 50 years ago, everyone knew the local owners of their stores, their, bakery, et cetera. And I feel like, especially in the pandemic, that's why we decided to open more stores. There was this real emotional tie to shopping local and supporting local businesses. Not that we can't provide things on a bigger scale, but to still try to deliver on that idea of that bigger isn't always better. Sometimes it's really having great follow through.
Do you have a question?
Are you going to open up any stores in Austin?
Austin is exactly the kind of market that we like. So we're really, we have all the same issues with growth that you guys have all discussed earlier, which is staffing. Staffing is really hard because we want people to have a good customer experience. And so, but we have found the best places for us is when we're not part of like a mall or 50 other stores. We really want to be that special shop in a really cool hip area, that kind of thing. And Austin obviously has that in spades. So those are the kind of markets we like.
I think Scottsdale's here for you too, Lisa, though. Anytime you want to come here.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty tired, so I lost my voice. So I'm hoping to grow more.
Unfortunately, we have to end this segment now, but it sounds like you've really hit on something here. If you're on your 3rd store, especially, and people can find out more at theperfectprovenance.com. And I plan to find out more, like I see a trip to Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Thank you, Lisa, Laurie, and listeners, you're listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710, the voice of New York. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710 with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart and our special guest, Debra Boblitt. And we have just had fabulous conversations on the show, fabulous ideas and products. If you missed any of it, it's on our podcast tomorrow. If you want to see these people's gorgeous faces, I'm going to say this again. We always get the best looking people on the show. Maybe they know they're going on YouTube. So anyway, they'll be on our YouTube channel. It's Passage to Profit Show. But now we have our final presenter. And I actually met Steve Spiro networking, and he's just such a fun guy. But he teaches people how to communicate. So if you're kind of shy and you've got to get out there because you've got a business, but you thought your business was the back office, not the front office, and you found out it's both, then Steve can help you with that. So welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I appreciate the invite and being on the show with this incredible group here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I'll give you a little bit of my background. So I started my first company out of college in advertising. I did that for many years, had a very illustrious career. Also have a martial arts background, a couple of black belts, had a karate studio, and work ethic, hard work and all that was the key to success. And fortunately, but being shy, introverted, and earlier on in my life, picked on, bullied, learning disabled, dyslexic, kind of kept to myself, very quiet. I was in a very dark place for many years. And then I was very blessed to have a very successful entrepreneur, to be introduced to that man. And he took me on his wing, took on a mentoring role, got me on a path of self-development, books and audios and networking. And so wound up shifting, getting out of the advertising industry, getting into technology, now consulting. But along the way, I've been become an avid networker and been asked to speak, kind of like Deborah. I enjoy speaking engagements. I've got a show, a LinkedIn Live show now that I do with a co-host, and it's been a blast. And today, 17,000 contacts in my phone, 13,000 LinkedIn connections, and I love connecting people. I love sharing and really inspiring people and how they also can really get out of their shell and really learn how to really be a connector as well.
That's great. So how did you do that? I mean, how do you learn to go from an introvert to somebody who is obviously communicates in a very fluid way?
I'll let you know when it happens. It's still work in progress. It's every day I push myself out of my comfort zone. It's my motto today is there's danger in the comfort zone, right? And I just want to always push myself. And so, yeah, some things that have helped along the way. I mean, certainly I've done a lot of reading. I've read a ton of books. I thank God for Audible because dyslexic reading, they didn't go together. So Audible came along and I blow through 2 to 3 books a month, sometimes 4, depending on how long the book is. And that's been tremendous. And I've, but also just got out there and started networking. The gentleman that I'm blessed to be mentored by, just challenged me. And so I made a goal of literally meeting, 2 or 3 strangers every day living life. Now, this is before COVID, obviously. And that really got me out of my comfort zone. And so, pumping gas at the gas station or online at the supermarket, just striking up conversations that I found the more I got outside of myself, the more inspiring and motivated and excited I was. And so I started doing networking groups. I belonged to some formal networking groups early on and getting the skills of that because especially the ones that meet every week, there's a sort of a formula to that. And they encourage, the face-to-faces, the meetings afterwards and all those things. I mean, it just kind of compiled and leveraging now LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn and I'm able to, I get a lot of face-to-face Zoom meetings as a result of people I connect with on LinkedIn. And so it's just been fun, but it's work in progress. I think anyone can do it. I think the first premise that I like to bring to the table or I lead with how can I add value for you? I'm not leading with what can I pitch you? What can I get from you? No, we did a show this past week on Monday with famous author Bob Berg from the Go Giver series. And I love his premise of, you give, right? And you give and eventually you'll get, right? You don't go to a fireplace and you say, hey, you give me the fire and then I'll give you the wood. No, you got to put the wood in first and then you get the fire, right? And that's, the law of reciprocity. You give and then you receive, right? And so I go into this experience with a giving mentality. And how can I serve you? How can I be of value to you? And I want to learn about you.
Excellent. So, Deborah, do you have any questions or comments for Steve?
I love that because it goes to the servant leadership kind of concept, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And I completely agree with you. When you give, you receive. And if you give from your heart, and that sounds exactly like what you're doing, you will receive in return. And I think
Absolutely.
sometimes it's more rewarding to give than it is to receive. And you're showing that with what you're giving to others. And I like your approach very, very much. And that is, how can I serve you? What value can I bring to you? And that's
Absolutely.
excellent. Love it. Very
Appreciate
successful,
that.
I'm sure. Sure.
Kenya?
Yeah, it's a ton of fun.
Yeah, so we have a lot in common when it comes to the whole dyslexic thing. I actually have struggled with that my entire life since I was a kid. So I respect when someone takes that challenge and uses it to help level themselves up. I also, when you were speaking, I heard A Little Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale in there. You put
Absolutely, you got it.
That was a game changer for me. But I would ask you, like, I'm a natural networker, but when I'm in rooms where I feel like it's forced, it's really challenging for me. So what advice would you give to somebody who naturally might be able to have conversations with people, but when they get in atmospheres where it's like, it feels forced, how can you kind of break through that?
Well, first of all, that is challenging. And my blood pressure goes up. My heart rate goes up when I know I have, and I love the pandemic. I know that's hard to say, right? But the pandemic forced us to all be on Zoom. And Zoom was so much easier to network because, you go to a Zoom room and, you hit right click and you chat with the person and you get their contact information. You set the face-to-face up. That was a lot easier than going on and just interrupting people. Like if you have a group of 3 or 4 or 6 in a circle and, trying to get somebody to take notice of you. I mean, that's definitely intimidating, but, and we'll be back to that again, in the Northeast where I'm from, it's starting to open up. So, but prior to that, a couple of things that I've done is I made a goal and of how many, cards I wanted to get. Now, it wasn't about getting the cards, but that was the way I was able to quantify. And I didn't, because there's a lot of times you go to these groups and, especially if you're shy introverted, like I tend to be in my core nature, you'll tend to like meet one or two people and then spend the whole night with those 2 or 3 people. And that's not getting you out of your comfort zone. That's not getting you enough people to meet. And to me, the magic is in the follow-up. So you want to be normal, you want to come across very pleasant, and you want to get to know people, but obviously it's a follow-up. It's not really, you're not going to create an amazing relationship no matter how long you speak with that person at that event. You're going to do it in the follow-up, subsequent follow-ups, right? But yeah, so just challenging myself to get to meet a bunch of people. I like going with a partner. And so doing it when you have other people there with you, that's very helpful, right? So now there's somebody else that's, you can commiserate with, or maybe you can have like a fun little challenge with that and, say, hey, how'd you do? And, that kind of thing. Or I love the fact is I could talk about my friend across the room and he or she could talk about me across the room. Hey, you need to meet my friend, Bill Shulman, right? Or whatever. So there's that factor as well.
So Steve, as a networking guru, what do you teach people? How do you, what are some of the skills that they could expect to learn working with you?
Yeah, so I think number one, I don't like the term networking. That's why Master Connector is the name I go by, right? Because networking has this affiliation with soliciting, the bar scene, dating. It's like, just after that kind of thing. So it's just, I like connecting, and I think the younger generation likes connecting better.
Professional connector. What kinds of skills would you help people develop?
Help them really to learn how to connect better, right? So number one, when you're, I remember, I'll tell a quick story. I was at an event, this was before COVID, and I was with a young guy who he and I were partnering up and going out networking sometimes. And he's a financial planner guy, really, really good guy. So it was an event where there was a panelist, some panels up front, and we wanted to go introduce ourselves and meet one of the panelists. So the panelist said, "So what do you do?" to my friend, I won't mention his name. And he's proceeded to go 2.5 to 3 to 4 minutes into it. And at the end of it, when he finally stopped talking, I said, "Hey, do you have a card?" I didn't even get to say what I did. And that was that. I wasn't going to, but it was, so the one thing is don't vomit on people about what you do. Number one, I like to say, if somebody asks me what I do, I'll give them maybe 2 or 3 words, maybe a sentence or a sentence and a half, and I go right back to them. Yeah. So what, where you're from, what do you do? Like, what do you do for fun? And get into conversations about them. And then it's important to take notes, right? Take notes, not on the spot, obviously, but afterwards, right? If you have their card, right on the back of the card, or if you got their phone, phone number and it's in your phone. I like to use the area in the phone for notes under the contact. So learning about the person is super important, not just trying to pitch something. And so that's one of the skills. There's a lot of things that I teach on how to proper do network effectively on LinkedIn. That's a huge factor in one of the things I love to coach and teach people on.
Well, those are some great tidbits. I think people should check you out. So is the best way to find you on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is really the ideal for me. Steve Spiro, obviously, I have a business page, Master Connector, as well. And then, yeah, for sure, find me. And I also have a YouTube channel, Master Connector. So, but I love LinkedIn. I'm like a one-trick pony as it relates to social media, for sure.
Okay, so unfortunately, we're out of time for this segment, but you can find Steve Spiro, S-P-I-R-O, on LinkedIn, or look for the Master Connector. And thank you for that, Steve. You're listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710 with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart and our special guest, Deborah Boblitt. And we will be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. Passage to Profit. It was a magnificent show, was it not?
It really was.
A magnificent shoe, as a.
Yes. So we had Deborah Boblitt, who teaches leadership and is a motivational speaker on leadership. And you can find her at deborahboblitt.com. That's DEBRA BOBLITT.com.
If you want to get motivated, go see Deborah.
No, she knows her stuff and she's amazing. I love talking to her. And then Bogdan Odlinsky had Solve IQ. So he solves problems that you're having, but you don't even realize you're having them with your computer. But if you use his stuff, I mean, it'll make a big difference in your life because it'll make a big difference in how your computer behaves for you.
I'm going to buy it because it takes Netflix forever to load on my computer.
So you can find out more about his product at solveiq.com, SOLVEIQ.com. Then we had our very own Kenya Gibson from iHeartMedia, talking about the power move. And you can find her at Kenya Gibson at iHeartMedia.com, and it's Gibson with a P, spelled just like it sounds. Then we had Lisa Laurie with The Perfect Provenance. So high-end luxury items that are special.
With the provenance.
With the provenance, yes. And you can find her at theperfectprovenance.com. She's got 3 stores, one on the East Coast, 2 on the West Coast. Great place to go if you're on vacation or just want something different.
Great food and great luxury, all in one fell swoop.
Right. And then we had Steve Spiro, Steve, S-T-E-V-E, Spiro, S-P-I-R-O. And he does a LinkedIn live show. He teaches people how to communicate, how to connect. He's the master connector. So you can find him on LinkedIn. That's his preferred place.
That's right. So I guess before we go, Deborah, do you have any final words for our audience this evening?
Yes, I do. And I would say if you're looking at opening your own business, no matter what that is, follow your passion and don't give up.
I love it. That's a great creed for any entrepreneur. So
what about you, Bogdan?
I guess parting words is if you ever feel that you're alone in front of your technology and you want to know that there's somebody there to help, come to Solve IQ.
All right. IT help with a human face. So very much appreciated.
A human component. You can talk to a person.
And a human component too. So in any case, we have to sign off now. But before we go, I want to say thank you for listening to Passage to Profit. And we'll be back again next week with another interesting and exciting episode. Entrepreneurs know no bounds. And but before we go, I'd like to thank our team, iHeart, the whole iHeart team, Noah Fleischman, our producer, Alicia Morrissey, our program coordinator, Angela Wolf, our video producer, and don't forget to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This is Richard and Elizabeth Gerhardt signing off for Passage to Profit on iHeartRadio, WOR 710, the voice of New York.
Okay, we're done.